Today on the breakdown, Grant Dennison transforms into a Cajun mastermind as we delve deep into a Hustler Casino Live big money, high stakes hand where one player is bluffing and the other player has a pretty good hand. But you know, sometimes you can only beat bluffs even though you have a good hand. And then what do? How do you decide? How do you come heads or tails of any of it? Well, normally we would talk to Grant Dennison about it on this podcast, but not today. Today we're talking to Cajun Grant. That's right. It's the breakdown. Grant, Cajun Dennison, and Jonathan Levy.
People are going to be pretty confused because there's no Cajun here. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yes, and maybe once in your life.
I've tried yes anding a lot, and with you, it's just too much. I can't. So I
could have done it for. Could have tried for a second.
I'm not doing it. I can't believe you did this to me. I'm kidding.
I can't believe you immediately destroyed the opening. He was doing a Cajun accent just before we started. Super
not
into
a good one.
It was terrible, but it was funny and it was super into it doing it. Like I got up and left, and he kept going, and I could hear it in my headphones. And he's like, "Maybe no, Jonathan Levy getting a drink, blah blah," like just going on and on. And as soon as we start, though, I cue it up. You could have given us a little taste.
Yeah, gotta make you look like a fool.
You don't want to give the people a taste.
Nope. Just imagine Wilford Brimley in Hard Target, and if you don't know what I mean by that, go to your local VHS rental store, rent Hard Target, featuring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Wilford Brimley and some woman of that era and watch it. Yeah.
That wasn't offensive at all. Some woman of that era. They're all the same to me.
Nobody knows the woman in Hard Target. Nobody knows who it is.
Well, you don't.
Her grandpa or her dad was like a disabled homeless veteran and he was hunted by the rich, and she reached out to the only man who could do something about it.
It's Erica
the
Eleniak,
guy who we're going to
buddy.
pretend doesn't have a Belgian accent.
Erica Eleniak.
Also
also in Under Siege, the Steven Seagal movie. She's the woman there as well.
Oh, yeah?
No, I don't know who the woman is in Hard Target. Come on. But Erica Eleniak was in the other thing. So
yeah,
we did good. Crushed it.
Mm-hmm. Good job.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is, but
she's a former Playboy model.
So is she a good actor?
No, she's not.
But Steven Seagal is, and so is Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I
mean, that's the thing.
A rising tide lifts all boats.
Or something. What does a falling tide do?
Sinks all boats.
And there it is. Yeah. And there you have it.
Have we just done philosophy? Have we done it just for the day?
Won the whole podcast, and it's Cajun time. Go. Come on.
I'm not going to do it.
Say one thing in Cajun.
I can't. I am not Cajun. I'm from Chicago.
So
and we have a jazz rivalry with the Cajuns, so I can't do it. The Chicagans and the Cajuns have a jazz rivalry.
You were doing fine. Maybe I should have praised your accent a little more while it was going, and maybe you would have gotten
you messed that
confidence.
Up. You were shitting on it. That's what you were doing. You want me to do something?
That's a lie.
You know this about me. I only like doing things that I'm good at.
I do.
If I'm bad at it, I don't want to do it.
I understand.
Yeah.
But I wasn't shitting on it. I just didn't say anything. I was like, I just don't want to hear it anymore. But then I set you up to keep going, and then you didn't want to. And no, you were doing a fine job. But anyway, I understand you're not going to do it.
You're too easily exasperated.
You're proving some weird point about control. I don't know. It's fine.
Why do you have to turn it into something like that? Why do you have to do that? Why is that what you do? Maybe we should talk about that psychologically.
Like I see it.
Why you feel the need to take the therapist role in all conversations.
Why does Jonathan? That's a great question. Why does Jonathan feel the need to say what he thinks to me, Grant Dennison? Why is that okay? That's what you're asking.
I'm confused. Who is who now? What's happened? Like, is this some sort of a sci-fi
play,
movie?
Buddy? All the therapists do that. It's
is
really
this the
strong.
Apple TV Plus show Dark Matter? Is that what this is?
It could
because it
you wouldn't know if it wasn't.
Joel Edgerton is involved. He's attached to the project.
Somehow quite good in that role too. Quite good.
There's nothing wrong with the Edge. You know, he does all right in his roles.
He's fine, but he really kills that.
Better if you call him the Edge, though. It's a little bit better, right?
But I get confused about if he's a bassist.
No, that's you can just be. It's obvious. Like there's the Edge, the bassist from U2, and there's the Edge who co-starred with Tom Hardy in Warrior, the best MMA movie ever made.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
See,
I'm ready.
Too
to
easily
move on.
exasperated. Too easily exasperated.
I just lost all the activation energy left my body on Joel Edgerton conversation. I don't know. It just went away. The balloon let all the air out. I don't know.
I think that happens to a lot of people with the Edge. I think it's pretty typical when talking about the Edge.
I think so.
Speaking of the Edge, Ryan7723 has an edge on the field of suggesters over the past 2 podcasts because it's 2 in a row for Ryan7723. And they're actually from the same video, which is, I'm talking about it as if it's impressive, but that's less impressive than if it were for multiple videos, but still good job. Still good job.
Ryan, you're this close to the hat trick, which of course does get you a hat in the mail. We will mail you a hat if you get the 3 in a row. So you're 1 away. We wish you the best. We do have complete autonomy in deciding, Grant and I, which one is next. So you should know that.
You the best? Did you say we wish you the best instead of
wish you the best? Is it weird to say we wish you the best?
I feel like you said wish. we wish you the best.
I hope I said with, but I'm pretty sure I said wish. I'm sorry, man.
Doesn't matter. Ryan, good job. Suggest on Discord, everybody. We have a link in the description of this podcast. Go to Discord, suggest hands. Right. Let's talk about this hand because this is just like, this feels just like a psychotic hand. It feels quite psychotic from one player here. And in some ways, and the incentive structure makes it this way with all of these live streams that are higher stakes that get players like Mike X playing, where it feels like a competition to see who can make the most psychotic play in some cases, and a lot of that is because the streams will invite you back if you make psychotic plays. But, there's obviously the downside of psychotic plays tend not to be profitable. So we'll see about this one. We'll see what we think about this one and if we think it's a good idea. Should we get to the hand?
Let's please get to the hand.
Oh, don't do the please thing. Henry, who we've done some stuff of Henry's on maybe 2 or 3 hands that Henry was involved in, something like that. He's a regular on Hustler Casino Live. He's made some interesting plays. He seems to have a pretty good understanding of the game. We're playing 25-50 with a $100 straddle. Henry has 43,500, opens to 400 in the cutoff with ace of spades, 9 of clubs. Fine. Mike X, who has 18,700, calls out of the small blind with ace 10 off. Whatever. He's not going to matter.
Okay.
And the big blind is a player named Cash. We've never done a hand with cash in it, I don't think.
No.
Right?
No.
He's got about the same stack as Henry. And he's got 5-3 of clubs, and he calls out of the straddle. So far, so good. Mm-hmm. I mean, Henry's open is fine, but I hate having that hand, ace 9 off. Mike X's call is fine, I guess, but a 3-bet is probably better when you're the small blind and
it's not,
there's big blind and straddle.
It's not a good call.
Yeah.
Come on.
When he's only in for 25. Anyway, 1,400 in the pot. Mike's not going to matter. Neither should Henry, but he will. The flop is 4 deuce deuce with 2 clubs. So open-ended straight flush draw for cash. How do you want to, what's your general plan when you flop like this out of the big blind or the straddle or whatever for cash?
I mean, mostly I am looking to build a big pot, usually as a check raise on the flop. Definitely not always. Like you want to be able to keep a few of these in as calls, and you want to keep a few of these in as your donks as well. I think it plays okay as a donk, but I like the idea of using this as part of the check raising range, especially from the straddle on a 4 deuce deuce, where we really have trip deuces. We have all the deuces compared to everybody else for sure. We have pocket fours. I guess everyone has pocket fours, but we have pocket fours too. This is better for our range, right? I mean, we don't have that many overpairs compared to Henry for sure, but still we have all the deuces. It feels like a big deal. I think this plays really well as a check raise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to the c-bet frequency of Henry because Mike acts first and Mike checks, spoiler. So there's only one player left to act and he's betting into 2 players. If Henry's c-bet frequency isn't that high here, maybe a lead is better. But if he's going to c-bet with relatively high frequency in this spot, then I think I like the check raise too.
I mean, this feels like a pretty high frequency board continuation bet, doesn't it? 4-4 deuce.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing we're really worried about is the straddle. I guess Mike X can have overpairs and clubs. Or pocket fours, and the straddle can have trip deuces sometimes, and once in a while pocket fours. But like mostly, I think we get a lot of folds if we bet here, right? Like we're just going to fold out all the random overcard trash. This just doesn't connect that much with these guys' ranges.
Yeah, Henry's in one of those spots where he is typically ahead of both opponents, but also is happy to clean up equity and just win right now.
Absolutely.
So it checks to him. Cash does check, and Henry bets 400 into 1400, just like pure equity denial. Got the 9 of clubs as a little blocker to continues, which is nice. I think he would have bet even if he didn't have the 9 of clubs.
It's really small. It's really small. Like someone like Mike X, stationy Mike X might call with, Jack 10 and stuff like that when we bet 400 here. I don't know if he really will, but he might.
He does call with ace 10.
Yeah, there you go.
So maybe we need to make it more like half pot if we want to get the job done.
Yeah.
Especially when it's a pretty deep game. Although Mike has the effective stack is not that deep. Started with 18K. Anyway, he calls, and Cash is going to do the raising.
Cool.
What size do you like if you're Cash?
We don't have to be a prisoner to Henry's sizing. So Henry went smaller than we would have, but we don't have to. We can still size it as if he had made a normal bet and there was a normal call size. So we can act like the pot's a little bit bigger, I think, if we want, because the pot is bigger, right, than the size that Henry would have typically chosen here. So let's see. There's 1,400 in the pot. So there's 2,000 in the pot. I think a raise to, what'd you say?
2,200, but yeah.
2,200?
Yeah.
Wasn't there 14? Oh, yeah, you're right. 2,200. Okay, fine. I think a near pot size raise is pretty good. So like around 2,000 seems about right to me. Like that should clean up most of the things. And anyone who calls should really have something worth calling. And then we're going to define things, and we still have a lot of room to make big bets on the turn if we want to.
Yeah, I mean, I like what Cash does, which goes even a bit bigger than that. He goes to 2,400, and I think when him and Henry are this deep, I think I like that size a little bit more even. So he goes 2,400, and of course the hand should be over. This is just you tried to clean up equity as Henry. Guess what? Didn't work out. I guess if Cash has a draw and not a made hand, he gets to win the hand because I have ace 9 offsuit right now.
Right. Yeah,
but that's not what happens. That's not what happens.
Obviously.
Henry calls, obviously with nefarious intent. Yeah. And we're going to have to talk about why he might do that after we discuss that Mike folds, which is easy and quick. Does he have any combinatorial reason to use this hand as a float in position against the check raise?
Not that I can obviously come up with. We actually block draws with our hand. We block ace 3, we block ace 5, we block clubs with the 9. This feels like almost the exact opposite of the kind of hand. Even if we were going to call with an ace high or a high card hand, this feels like one of the worst ones to do it with.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the best aces to float are the spades, the ace X of spades, where we have the backdoor nut flush draw to go with like the potential to bluff. And then we don't block the clubs.
If we're going to do it at all. Like, I don't know why we'd even really be doing it, period, which I guess we can have a greater conversation about with Mike X behind us, especially. But this one really doesn't make any sense to me why we choose this hand right now to do it. Like what we're thinking and how that would work. Unless we think, even if we think Cash is crazy, if we think Cash is crazy, we didn't have to c-bet, by the way. We think we're always getting check raised. If we don't think he's crazy, guess what? He's got a major range advantage on us, and Mike X is still sitting there behind us with potentially clubs, an overpair, once in a while a full house, once in a while a deuce with ace deuce suited kind of a thing. Like, I just don't know why we would put any more money. We barely put any money in this pot anyway. My God, we bet 400 on the flop into 14. Like, there's just no reason to continue here.
One possible explanation is that Henry thinks he has the ace 9 of clubs. That would be right. An explanation.
Yeah.
Maybe he thinks he has the ace 9 of spades. That's also slightly better than having the offsuit one.
Though, is it? It's still not good enough.
I don't know. Probably not.
The board's paired. Like, why? Why continue?
It feels like he's just setting up a fancy play. It feels like fancy play syndrome. And we're seeing like the first cough of the syndrome. You know, it's like 2 scenes later, he'll be dead.
They always are. As soon as anyone coughs in a movie for any reason at any time, unless they have just been revived from drowning They are going to die really soon. If they were drowning and they cough, they always live. But every other cough in a movie always leads to death within 2 scenes. You are correct. 100%.
Yep. So this is the cough. Henry's not going to make it. Sorry, Henry fans. He calls, Mike folds. Again, Henry has ace 9 offsuit. He does have the backdoor 9 high flush draw. That's the only thing he's really got going on besides ace high and, the best hand. He does have the best hand. So there is that.
Okay.
He's really, Cash obviously has a reasonable hand here, so we can't draw any conclusions about Cash being too wide from this small one sample thing, right? He has the straight flush draw, so totally reasonable to check raise. We don't see him here with 7-5 of diamonds or something. We haven't seen enough Cash to know. But here we are with 6,600 in the pot, and the turn is the Jack of clubs.
Bingo.
So Cash makes his flush, although he doesn't have Henry drawing dead. Henry, of course, has the 9 high flush draw, which he will not be thrilled if it comes in, I would think. He's not going to be like super excited about his hand. It is a paired board, and it's not a good flush draw. Cash is going to continue betting. It feels like Henry should have an overpair a lot of the time, right?
Yes.
And,
yes.
If he has bigger clubs, that sucks. That's just going to happen sometimes. We have to deal with that.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah. Sometimes he has a full house that he's slow playing, I guess. Cash bets 4,500 into 6,600.
I think that's a mistake.
You think you should go smaller? Bigger?
Yes. I think it's definitely a smaller bet here. We'd be betting to keep in the overpairs that have a club, right? We don't want to bet out like two black 9s, for example, which if we bet too much, they may just find a fold because they don't really know where they are and they don't know if they're going to be anywhere. I like betting smaller for sure. Henry also, range-wise, we have a lot of trip deuces here, and Henry's uncapped in terms of the flush anyway, right? Henry absolutely has flushes. He's uncapped. We have a hand that is strong in real life, but also our perceived range after the check raise and all that is still strong, but it doesn't love the club. Our range doesn't love the club. I think we should bet small with the intention of not folding to a raise, but I think we should be betting small here to keep in some of the overpairs. Maybe some overpairs without a club come along. I don't know. But certainly to keep the stuff with the random one club stuff in there, not giving it a good enough price to continue, but still keeping it in there a lot of the time.
Yeah, I like those thoughts. Those are good. I want to expand on the uncappedness of Henry's range. I wouldn't say it's just uncapped to the nut flush. I think he can have literally all hands that are really good. He could have quad deuces. He could have fours full. He could have just made jacks full. Yeah. So he's very much uncapped. I think you're right that from a theory perspective, a smaller size is in order. I don't know if Henry's a guy that you exploit in this game. There's probably better players to exploit, but sometimes sizing can be exploitative instead. And you would want to go bigger because it's Mike X and he's going to call with whatever. And so we want more money in the pot. So sometimes that's the case. I don't think Henry's that guy. I think you're right. We should go a little bit smaller. But Henry's going to do some confusing things in this hand, as we've already seen. So who knows what type of guy Henry really is, because he calls again.
Wow.
He once the cough starts, it gets worse and worse, and it starts to sound a little bit more like it's deep in your chest. And before it was just like, and now it's that thing where you're like, I don't want to be near that person. I think they're going to give me the syndrome if I get near that person, because they can't stop with that deep, deep cough. With his $4,500 call on the turn with ace 9 with the 9 of clubs on 4 deuce deuce jack with 3 clubs.
He does have a club in his hand at least, right? Turns out it's good if he hits it. Cool. He'll never know. It isn't like he can ever confidently put money in if a club comes on the river. I don't think he would hate a bet if a bet comes and a club comes. He might call, but he would hate it. If check to him when a 4th club comes, I don't know that he could value bet that comfortably. Maybe he would target a deuce if he thinks the guy is super sticky, insanely stationy, but hard to believe you get called there. I think we're just checking it back. So the implied odds, I'm saying, are very poor, but the reverse implied odds, pretty fucking high. I don't know why I guess we're calling because we have some weird plan and we're continuing on, like you said. That's it. Right?
It's got to be all the plan. And I think the plan was going to unfold no matter if the club came or not. I think the plan was to represent whatever comes. That was the whole plan the whole time.
Yeah.
Which is, an interesting plan. And it doesn't seem like the right time for it, though, with the hand that we have. The only other reason to make a plan like that is if there's a massive range advantage in our favor. right? Sometimes our hand doesn't matter. And like based on previous actions, we can completely remove like the top 20% of potential hands from our opponent's range. Then maybe you can make a plan like this when we're deep stacked, but that's not the case here. Obviously, quad deuces are part of Cash's range, right? So
Oh my God.
like maybe he doesn't check raise that, but I think a lot of players will check raise quad deuces when there's this deep and there's two clubs. And
I don't know about a lot of players. Most people do not check raise quads on the flop. I mean, almost very few players are going to do that, right?
All right.
Like,
fine. Maybe he doesn't.
But fine. But he can have pocket fours at least some of the time. He can have any random deuce, by the way, which is not, you would assume isn't going to fold, even though the third club comes. And we are drawing nearly dead against anyway, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? And by the way, the club came in. So if he had clubs, now he has a flush. What can we beat? I mean, obviously we can't beat anything, but what are we going to be able to, what hands are we going to be able to scare away, I guess is my question later on. Like, it's hard to come up with stuff.
Well, the idea is just to go completely hog wild, I think.
Yeah.
And so Henry calls. The pot is $15,600. The river is the 8 of hearts. So a club would have been helpful to Henry. I wonder what he would have done. Would he have turned it into a bluff if he hit the club? Who knows?
Sounds crazy. That sounds insane.
4 deuce deuce, 2 clubs, jack of clubs on the turn, 8 of hearts on the river. All right, let's sit in Cash's seat for a second.
Yeah.
Henry called the flop and turn. We have to be a little bit concerned that we don't have the best hand, right?
Sure.
Do we need to bet?
I think we do. I think we should bet
Get
to
called
try and
by
get called by
overpairs with a club.
Yeah, exactly. 2 kings, 2 aces, 2 queens with a club. They're all going to, well, they're all going to very strongly consider calling, if not just call. Right? They're going to be like, this is the hand I call with. And if we check, they're aren't they going to check back? Aren't they going to be like, how do I get value from most of these hands? Like, I'm just going to, so like, I think we just have to go for it, right? That's the most likely holding he has, right? Based on the way this hand's played out.
Yeah. I mean, I think once Mike folds the flop behind it, Henry can have a lot of flushes too, as played. You can have some full houses, maybe even quads. Who knows?
Sure.
How do you want to size this as cash? There's 15-6 in the pot.
Okay. And how much do we have back? We have a bunch, right?
36K is what everybody has back.
Okay. 15-6. Okay. So we're trying to get called by like 2 black queens, basically, right? That's what we're sizing for here. So we don't want to go, I don't think we need to go insanely big. I think like 2/3 of the pot is probably fine, like 10,000. I don't know. Maybe that's that feels almost like maybe there's the ugly stepsister of the choice. Maybe bigger or smaller is better than middle.
Yeah, I have bifurcated thoughts here, and I think one of them is bigger. Like sometimes I make plays where I use big sizing, where it's like partially to make it easier for myself if they
so
raise. You know,
right? I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah. So like I think if you just go full pot here, then you can.
Yep.
Like you're you're polarized anyway, and you're still gonna get called by some of those pairs with a club.
Yep.
You're still gonna get some value there, and it defines things a little bit more easily for you. Another thing to do is to go super small. Try to get the click war response, and just like snap call whatever happens. Right?
Yeah, bet just like 1,500.
Yeah,
and see if he just can't help himself. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you bet 1,500, are 2 black kings gonna just call? They might go for a raise. Right? Yeah. And the thing is, it's hard to come up with hands that Henry would need to raise as a bluff, right? He shouldn't really have any of those.
That's true.
So he should have a lot of easy calls, but not too many bluff raises. So that makes me want to go pot rather than super small.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
So I think that's better than 10,000, like I was saying. I think pot or 16,000 is better. One, we define everything more clearly. It's less likely to induce something that's going to maybe make us make a bad decision. Also, we get more value and maybe looks bluffier too, right? Lots of good things happen all at the same time.
I think we get called with a similar frequency by those pairs with a club.
I agree.
With 15 or 16K as we do with what cash does, which is 7K.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. So 7K feels really small and weak. Feels super weak, which I guess it's like he's like a little afraid now, right? Like, what's this guy supposed to be able to call me with? And also we're sizing for the overpairs, which 7K should get called. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But Henry's not done with his adventure.
Right.
Henry's adventure continues. And he, of course, moves in for 36K.
Of course he does.
So I'm going to ask you why, because I think you'll definitely know why. Go ahead. Tell me.
Why Henry moves in?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say there's two reasons. One is the sizing probably doesn't look super strong and scary anymore. Right now, it looks like someone who's being a little defensive with their betting. So there's some, you sniff some fold equity there, number one. But the bigger reason is pretty clearly that Henry just decided to do this today. Henry ate his Wheaties and decided, I'm winning this hand right now. I'm going to give it everything I got. I don't care. So I'm calling this check raise on the flop. I'm calling the turn bet, and now I'm raising, because why the hell did I do those other two things if I'm not raising now when he bets 7,000? Maybe if he bets pot or more, I don't do any of this. I give up. But in this spot, this is about as green a light as I'm going to get besides a check, right? Let's do it. This is what we're here for.
Yep. I guess. I mean, I was hoping that through the course of this podcast, we would find something that justified the way Henry played this hand. I haven't found it. Okay.
I found one. Maybe Henry feels like he's too reasonable too much of the time on the show. Everyone sees him playing all his hands, and he doesn't really get super out of line. My experience of him is not a guy who gets out of line like this, kind of ever. Right. So playing one of these hands,
that's a good guy to be to make this play. It's going to work a lot if you're that guy.
That is part of it. If Ludacris is doing this, I think we have to call for sure with our flush, even though we still don't love it. We still probably just have to call. But that's not, but then maybe this makes it so maybe Henry feels like he's not getting called enough on the river when he raises and stuff like that, when other guys like Ludacris always get called. And so he's like, I got to do something where I'm a little bit crazy, a little bit on stream. I got to do something showy and crazy. It's okay. I'm going to potentially lose $30,000 here, $35,000, $40,000, but that's an investment. And for the next several years of the game, if I can do it showy enough, people will remember that. And then I'm going to get called more on the river, and it'll pay for itself. And maybe the play even works. This is if this works, now it's even better. This is only if this reasoning is what's going on. But that's the only good reason I can come up with for any of this.
Right. Because there's no poker theory reason to do it that I can see. I mean,
I don't think
the
so.
nine
Maybe
of clubs
Matt Berkey would have something, but I got nothing.
The nine of clubs, I don't feel is a good enough blocker to justify the play. It's
no way.
You could start to justify it with the ace of clubs, but even then, I don't know. I think you would rather have a 4 in your hand, block full houses. I think having a full house blocker, if you had ace jack off and he hit the jack on the turn, I guess blocking the jack doesn't really help at all.
No.
It's just blocking the 4.
I think the ace of clubs is better than a 4 in this case, because I think most guys don't check raise full houses on the flop. They have 4-4 on a 4 deuce board. I think they mostly call. So unless it's a guy who there's some guys who never raise that, and there's some guys who raise it a lot, right? I feel like most recreational players do not raise there. And so if that's the case, the ace of clubs is a really valuable card, probably more valuable than a 4.
Yeah, there's also 4 deuce, which cash could have as the straddle.
But similarly to 4-4, I'm not sure how often he's really raising that. I think trip deuces is a much more raisable hand for these guys because it feels much more vulnerable. Pocket fours, you're just not afraid of. You want the club to come in. You want the guy to get there. You're not trying to blow him off the hand. Trip deuces, you want to charge him for that, and you don't love it when the club comes in, and you're trying to protect a little bit too. I think that's the mindset.
So I guess maybe based on that, if you're right, the justification for Henry's play would be nothing to do with his hand, but all to do with Cash's check raise on the flop, capping Cash at a flush at best.
Right. I think so. A flush feels really likely though, right? It's trip deuces or a flush most of the time.
So that's kind of interesting because 36K over 7K on the river on a paired board where you're pretty uncapped should get a lot of that to fold. It really should.
It should, especially if we have a reputation as solid and not one of the crazy guys. That should work most of the time. I mean, like you said, Henry can absolutely have jack. Jack makes so much sense here.
Yeah.
1,000,000%. Is Henry doing this with ace X of clubs? I guess he probably is. He's probably moving in with it, right?
If the reason for his bluff is that he believes that Cash doesn't have any full houses in his range, then I think he would probably.
I would think by the river when it's a $7,000 bet, we would expect him not to have a very, very few full houses anyway. At least very few.
Yeah.
So you'd be targeting other flushes. That's reasonable. to do that on the flop. You could of course raise on the turn also if you have the nut flush there, but so be it.
I think maybe the sizing is one of those things like we've talked about where it's actually too big in theory. If we're using all of the building blocks that we've used and established that we believe, and this is just for the theoretical, I'm not sure if this is true or not, that cash is capped at flushes because he raised the flop. If we say that for now, then I think the sizing is clearly too big for theory land. Because I think the sizing is designed to get him to fold. It's one of those spots like I've talked about where it's like sometimes you just use sizing that's way too big because it just works. Right. And I think maybe that's what Henry's doing if all of our building blocks are correct here. Where he's like, of course, if I had the nut flush, I would have made it like 22K because then I can actually sometimes get called by the weaker flushes. But this guy's not going to call 36K, so I'm going to make it 36K.
Yep.
So it might be that type of thing.
Yep. Yeah. Agreed.
So those
that sounds about right.
Those are all reasonable justifications for how Henry's playing the hand, actually. And if he's right, if we're right and he's right, then it's like it's a fucking risky play. But I guess there's some logic behind it. Something.
I mean, it's not a zero logic play, but on the river. I don't really know why we'd ever call the check raise on the flop unless we're trying to do this other crazy meta thing that I was speculating on, which I don't know if that's really what's going on. And we still have Mike X behind us, by the way, who absolutely can have real hands there. Absolutely can have pocket fours, or a hand he's not folding anyway. He's sticky. Maybe we got to look at Mike X before we called and looked like he was not interested in the hand, and we played with him enough to know he isn't. And then maybe that makes it easier. It's interesting how for certain players, when they raise the flop, they actually cap themselves. Like, it's like, oh, you can't have the super, super strong hands here because you would never play a super strong hand this way, right? Obviously, that's not true for everyone. I'm reminded of Benny Spindler way back in the day when he had King Jack and the flop was Jack, 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 and he 5-bet the flop with it, I think. And
aces
against aces. Now, the guy had the second nuts. But still, it's like only Benny Spindler known for being crazy. It's like ludicrous in this game, right? That's the guy who understands that he can get value with this and will play all his super strong hands really fast because he's playing so many hands fast. He has to play all his strong hands fast. Like he can't have everything, he just has to play them almost all that fast all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, we've done our best to justify what Henry's done here, but it's all predicated on Cash actually being the guy who doesn't have the super strong hands. And we don't know that.
And being a guy who actually is willing to fold. And we see in this game, there's some guys who just won't fold a flush in this game. I don't care if the board's paired, and I don't care if you are representing all things that are beating me. I'm calling anyway, I block flushes and fuck you. Okay, you have jacks sometimes. What else do you really have? Kind of a thing. Sure, he has other things, obviously, but still. Also, the sizing is a bit of a weird story, like you're saying, and some people are just going to call there. A lot of people are going to call there. Maybe Cash is a guy who's never going to call there, and Henry knows that. But now we're giving Henry a lot of credit for a guy who made some very questionable plays earlier in the hand. So I don't know. I
mean, to give Henry maximum credit would be to say that he has Cash dialed in. He knows exactly the type of player Cash is and how he's going to react to different things and how he's going to play different things. And he got it all right in this hand. That's to give him maximum credit.
To give him minimal credit, we would say he's clicking buttons like a monkey in a space shuttle, and this time they landed the space shuttle, but a lot of the time the thing blows up on re-entry, right?
Well, you say that because Cash ultimately folds, right? Which we hadn't discussed yet.
Well, I've revealed it now.
Yeah, which I get why he folds. He has the lowest flush that you can have. Henry's repping pretty much just full houses and maybe the nut flush, right? That's about all he's got.
I think so. I think that's it.
So as Cash, should we be calling with this hand? Should we be considering calling with this hand?
We should definitely consider it, but it feels like we are near the bottom of our range. I guess we can have trip deuces and have played it this way, right?
We have trip deuces, and those are not superior to flushes because they don't have significant blockers against what Henry's full houses would be, because Henry doesn't have deuce 4 or jack deuce. Right. Or 8 deuce.
Right. But those are worse hands than this. But like you said, doesn't matter because that feels like the easy fold. Trip deuces feels like if we bet the turn and we bet the river, we got raised, we're folding trip deuces here.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of flushes in our range. now that we have this flush, we do have all the better flushes though, right? Like so many better flushes. We probably do have at least the occasional full house a few different ways. One of them is we flopped it. Another one is we had deuce X of suited and we turned or rivered the full house, right? And we bet this way. Now, maybe we never actually in practice bet 7,000 on the river with a full house, which is what I think one of the things Henry's believing, right? But maybe we have some of those. Hopefully we have some of those. Even so, this feels like it feels like it's like just such a bad hand. And like it feels like we're always beat, except the story is so bad. That's the only thing is the sizing on the story at the river is so bad.
Yeah, I think the sizing is problematic for Henry, but also maybe just works, you just have to do it.
I think it's going to work against most players most of the time, this sizing, until they see you do it a few times and then they'll nut up and call, right?
I think it's quite possible that Henry's river play is profitable, but it's quite a flowery path to walk to get all the way from the flop to the river and have everything work out perfectly to allow you to be able to make this play. Yeah,
I agree completely. And now that and how many times can Henry get away with this, right? Like maybe this again, to my point, maybe he felt like he wasn't getting called enough on the river. And so now he'll get called more, but you're going to get called more now that you did this once, especially if you choose weird sizing in a spot when your opponent feels pretty capped, both based on their flop play and their river bet sizing. Like you're going to get called, you're going to start getting called a lot more. So just know that and adjust. Like don't keep doing this for a while. Like stop doing this now, unless someone is just going to fold because they're just going to fold anyway. Some people fold anyway, right? But there's a lot of these guys in this stream on Hustler Casino Live who are just going to put the chips in because that's what they do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely an interesting hand, and it feels like the old days, It feels like old days exploit poker, which, if Henry really did put all this together and was right, that's pretty cool, That's cool understanding of opponent tendencies and opponent reactions. But of course, from a poker theory perspective, he's really dancing between the raindrops here. He's really, he's on the edge.
I think the river play makes money based on everything we're seeing when the guy bets 7,000. I think that does make money. I don't think the other post-flop decisions make money. I think those are all very much losing money plays that happen not to lose money this time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're probably right. But anyway, Henry wins a pretty big pot. Risks a lot, but wins a pretty big pot with just kind of a random hand. So good for him.
It looks so cool when it works.
Yeah, it does. It is cool. Yeah. That's poker. Poker, without this type of play, poker would be less fun if people weren't making these types of plays.
For sure. And, the last hand we did last week, we were talking about Jungle Man betting the river and how can he have bluffs? What bluffs can he ever have? And we're like, but Jungle Man probably can find some bluffs because he's really trying to do that. This is sort of a similar example where if we were blind to everything, we'd be like, how can he have a bluff here? He called the check raise on the flop. He called the turn bet. He moves it on the river. Is he turning one pair into a bluff? That's all I can come up with. He's turning black queens into a bluff. There's nothing else, right? So... Yeah.
Anyway, cool hand. Pretty aggro hand. Yeah. Which, it's fun to see. You love to see it.
Music is my sunlight, and all I need is one mic, and I can show every single MC how it's done right. Every time I come by, I'm bound to leave them tongue-tied. I'm sipping on liquor, a quitter is what I'm not. We got one life, and I took a minor break, but I'm back to claim the throne. And gonna be traveling the globe, and still have time to make it home. And you gon' meet